Hi, a couple of years ago I started getting into D&D. As my passion for D&D grew, so did my collection of minis, and like many others out there, I now have boxes of shame, legions of unpainted minis. Now this is my underdog story. This is me painting every single one of my miniatures. Right, hi guys, so today I'm going to paint these three semi-transparent blazing skeletons. They're from the Ravenloft game, and I wanted something simple to paint because I knew I could do, I think, a good job with these, but the whole transparency thing did actually confuse the living hell out of me at first. But I decided to prime them using Army Painter's skeleton bone. And after I primed them, this is what they looked as. Now all of a sudden the details became much more apparent for me, at least. Plus I knew that since I primed them in skeleton bone, I can always paint them over with the exact same color. But first, I started out with matte white. The reason I did this is because I wanted really, one of my missions was I wanted really the flames to like pop and be super bright, because I've seen examples out there of people painting them, and I mean, to each his own, but I really wanted mine to like try to be as bright as humanly possible, and as far as I know, if you want something to be bright, then you need to have an undercoating of white, pretty much, since all miniature paints are somewhat translucent or transparent. So that's what it looks like when I've sort of painted all of the flames white, and this is what it looks like when it's dried. Now once it all three had dried, and I haven't been super accurate at this point, I'll I'll admit that, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be able to paint over a bone. But the next thing is I want to use some ink, and I'm using Vallejo's yellow ink here specifically. And the reason I'm using this is because it flows very nicely into everywhere where I want it to go. And also, I just, by using it, know that it's quite brilliantly yellow, and it's very vibrant. This is sort of what it looks like when it's done, and as you can see, I'm not super careful with where I put my paint or my ink. Now at this point it was time to bring out the dry brush. So I knew that I wanted it to sort of go from yellow to red. I was thinking of doing an orange first, but eventually I just went with Army Painter's pure red, because I figured if I do it thin enough, it's gonna go from sort of an orange tone to red, where it's gonna be, you know, at the far tops. That's where the red will be. One tip when you're dry brushing, try it out on yourself. And I saw there when I tried it on my skin that yeah, there's some sort of paint left there in the brush. But this is actually quite nice. You just go around, you just try to pick out all of the details. And again, at this point, since it's a fire, it's very organic. It doesn't have to be super, you know, perfect. These are some of the best things to dry brush: fires, fur, you know, those sort of things, because it's hard to fail, to be honest. And this is what it looks like when it's all dried, and you can see I had some nice dry brushing residue. So out with the skeleton bone color, put some in my wet palette, and then just use a little bit more detailed brush and just trying to pick out the actual details of the skeleton. Now it's gonna look a little bit strange for some time when you do this, because it's gonna literally look like you have a skeleton and then there's fire and there's nothing sort of bringing them together. But I'm aware of that, and that's totally fine. So like you see here, it looks kind of weird. The skeleton isn't affected. It feels almost like they're part of two worlds. But the next thing I wanted to do was to, now that this paint had dried, to bring in some nice strong tone from Army Painter to sort of darken down the skeleton. Now one thing you'll notice here, I could have used a thinner brush. I went with, I think, my I think that's a size 4 or something. I like using larger brushes in general, and I like using larger brushes when I wash. The reason for doing that is twofold. One, I don't have to take paint or wash as often, and two, and the main reason, I need to do fewer strokes on the paint that I already put on the model. And I've seen people sort of almost rubbing off their undercoat because they were using wash. And here is sort of a result. It's still not at this point dry, as you can see, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. I've let it sit for a while, but since I knew I wanted to do highlights on the skeleton, I figured I would just use the skeleton bone color, and since most of the highlights don't have that much wash because it's sort of gone into the recesses, I figured it was, I can try to be a little bit more time effective. So I just went on and did all of the highlights. And as you can see in my palette, I actually have some white there as well, which I eventually sort of combined once I sort of done one layer of highlighting. I combined it, like you can see in the wet palette there now, to create even higher or whiter highlights. And I did that primarily on the face because I wanted the face to sort of pop a little bit. At this point there was really just two things left, I think, yeah, because now everything has dried, we're all good. So at this point I decided I wanted to do some magic. I wanted to put some sort of these skeletons there's something animating them. So for that I used the purple tone wash, which is from Army Painter as well, and I just used my big brush again and dabbed a couple of sort of drops into the eyes because I wanted them to have some sort of magical glow in there. And I'm not sure you can really see it there. It comes a little bit, it's kind of faint. And then to wrap it all up, to frame in the picture, I'm just gonna go with my normal sort of painting all of the bases black, and I just use a flat black from Vallejo. Any flat black will do. It's really not important what brand of color generally you're using. I use all kinds of brands: Vallejo, Army Painter, P3. I guess my only gripe is I generally don't like Citadel, but it has less to do with the paint and more with the pots. Here is some twirls when I think it's in process of drying. And I think I have one more shot where all three, yeah, exactly. Here's all three Durinos. I'm fairly happy with this paint job. It was fairly simple, kind of quick. I'm liking it, definitely. The only thing is you're gonna have to let them dry when you use inks completely and then dry brushing. So with that said, let's take some glamour shots. Alright guys and gals out there, so as usual, like, comment, share, subscribe, and drop a comment. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has this sort of situation at home when you have a huge box of unpainted minis, keeping you from having a good night's sleep. Until next time, toodaloo.